The Simpsons Tapped Out is tapping out after 12 years, and whether in that time you gave it a little download to see what the fuss was about, or sunk hours and days into perfecting your own little slice of Springfield, there's no denying that the news of it shutting down is somewhat of a shock, as, much like the show that it's based on, it just seemed to be one of those staples that would go on forever. And with 308 updates, 831 characters introduced, and 1,463 quest lines to tackle, those who played it definitely got their money's worth, and so did EA. No official figures have been released as to how much has been made in total, but back in 2014, they boasted a revenue of $130 million from just 2 years of the title, so who knows how much there's been in the last 10. But now this behemoth of the mobile gaming world has fallen, the question is, who's next for the chopping block? For The Simpsons Tapped Out wasn't really anything new. City builders existed before it, and so did freemium models as a gameplay mechanic, but the combination of a free-to-play game in the palm of your hand that you can log into anywhere with an IP that is so popular, loved, and well-known the world over, it was a match made in heaven. And so, of course, everybody wanted a slice of that pie. And over the years, you start to see more and more TV shows coming out with their own mobile games to hopefully draw in existing fans with the promise of getting to visit iconic locations and play with fan faves, but not really adding much to gameplay as a whole. Heck, you can pick 2 animes and there will be a game for both of them that play almost identically, just a little reskinning here and there. And so the popularity and longevity of these titles are directly tied to the continued consumption of the original IPs, and there'll be a breaking point where actually it's just not profitable to keep them going. So let's take a look at which games may see their sunset sometime soon. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and so the folks over at The Simpsons must have had their socks charmed off with Family Guy. Not only has the show been described as The Simpsons for stoners, their mobile spin-off game, Family Guy: The Quest for Stuff, was the first major challenger for the mobile TV tie-in crown, being released in 2014, 2 years after Tapped Out. And if you had no knowledge of either show, you would be forgiven for thinking that it was the same game with a different name. Tasked with rebuilding Quahog from scratch, the isometric grid-based layout for construction, as well as a freemium model that propped up the purchases of notable locations and recognizable faces, started out popular, and 2 years after its release, its revenue was reported at $100 million. This figure, though, is lower than what The Simpsons had made in the same space of time, and so can one think it's been more profitable overall? With the TV show's viewership and popularity slowly decreasing over time, and the fact that the content isn't accessible to all, I mean, you'd let a kid play with The Simpsons, not with the Griffins. Could it be soon time to say goodbye to Peter and the gang? And you can't speak about one Seth MacFarlane baby without speaking about the other. American Dad, the far superior show to Family Guy in my humble opinion, also jumped in to take a piece of the App Store with American Dad: Apocalypse Soon. Much like before, featuring familiar locals and locales, this was instead a reskin of the almost unbelievably overwhelmingly successful Fallout Shelter. Creating a sprawling bunker beneath the Smith's house to farm resources to pour back into upgrading and to continue the cycle, the NPC population was instead made up of clones of Roger, as the show has a smaller pool of identifiable characters to draw upon compared to the aforementioned games. Granted, it has only been out for 5 years now and still has ongoing events to keep things a little fresh, but with its somewhat lackluster world building and not having the charm of the show that it spawned from, and with said show pulling in less viewers than the others, will the end come soon for Apocalypse Soon? But perhaps both of these games are continuing to survive because they are being propped up by Animation Throwdown: The Quest for Cards. Out since 2016, this competitive card battler features characters from both Family Guy and American Dad, but also other 20th television animation shows such as Bob's Burgers, King of the Hill, Archer, and Futurama, so I suppose Matt Groening still has some skin in play. Though originally popular, this too fell to the oft-seen formula of having such popular IPs to draw fans in on one hand, and heavily monetizing said fans for the chance to enjoy those IPs on the other. And considering that 2 of the shows that are listed are no longer on air, one is yo-yoing between being cancelled and renewed, and seemingly only the Belcher family coming out on top, do you think we'll be getting to the end of the deck with this one? Now, this one isn't necessarily a case of will it end soon, but more of a question of how is it still going? Ice Age Village is an obvious tie-in to the popular film series, and being released in 2012, you can see the clear inspiration from The Simpsons Tapped Out that came out only 2 months prior. You can build a village from scratch, populate it with prehistoric creatures, and oh yeah, there's a freemium model. Apparently they predate human civilization. But when you take a look at the update notes, there hasn't been any on iOS for the last year. And in fact, the last content update was a staggering 9 years ago. And considering the actual studio behind the films, Blue Sky Studios, closed its doors in 2021, there won't be any more Ice Age movies coming out. And so the fact there is still a 12-year-old tie-in available to download that has options to spend up to £100 on virtual acorns is a mammoth mind warp. Did you get that one? It's because there's a mammoth in the movie, and it's a mammoth that, yeah. Ray Romano voiced him. It's perfect casting for a mammoth. Finally, a game where you build a town from scratch, collect resources and buildings, and is full of characters with a not usually seen coloration. Oh no, it's not The Simpsons, it's the Smurfs Village. And this one may actually be a glimmer of hope amongst the dark clouds hanging over these IP tie-ins. For you see, this colourful handheld title came out the year before Tapped Out. It's one of the original models that the popular Springfield-based game took inspiration from, and its success can be owed to the popularity of its source content. The Smurfs have been out since the 1950s, and these diminutive blueberry-hued rapscallions continue to infiltrate the popular consciousness with movies, TV shows, and merchandise that will naturally funnel newfound fans to this game. And you may think after 13 years it might be showing signs of slowing down, but it is still being updated to this very day. In fact, there's been new content continuously added every month since release, showing there's still a market and audience for this type of title. And so perhaps I should change the question I asked at the beginning. It's not what will be next after The Simpsons is gone, but instead, why did The Simpsons have to go? I think the only ones who know the answer to that are holding the purse strings, and they're going off to buy a lot of donuts.